Bolt Action is Second World War skirmish game that takes you into the battlefields of Second World War, where you take on the role of the infantry platoon leader. Bolt Action is one of the most played historical games in the world, and this popularity has also led to some controversy over the rules, with one side loving the game and the other hating it. The biggest criticism is that the game, with its mechanics and overall concept, is more of fantasy World War II from the perspective of Hollywood filmmakers rather than realistic Second World War battle. The use of the old mechanics from Warhammer 40k and Necromunda is also divisive, and the similarity to the old Warhammer 40k is not coincidental. Both the gentlemen behind the rules, Priestley and Alessio Cavatore, were game designers at the Game Workshop and are signed off on the old rules for 40k, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, Lord of the Rings, Warmaster and Mordheim. The game has standard mechanics you would expect in a skirmish game. Units and weapons have different stats, combat is scored using dice, in this case 6-sided dice, and is affected by various modifiers and so on, as you might know from the other games. However, Bolt Action has two unique elements that set it apart from most other wargaming games: the painting system and the activation of units via command dice. Paints, loosely can be translated as suppression or even more loosely as stress, are gained by the unit by shooting at it. The enemy doesn't have to actually wound you and kill your soldiers, but just getting hit is enough to get a pin. Each pin makes the unit -1 on its own shooting, and it takes the same penalty for executing an odd. So you don't necessarily have to kill your opponent's unit, but you just suppress them so they eat dirt rather than return fire. It's not only a great mechanic, but a realistic one that will make video games veterans think of the iconic Second World War shooter Brothers in Arms. The order dice are then an original way to resolve unit activations rather than relying on the note tired "I play everything, then you play everything, so we will take turns all the game." Each unit generates an activation die, which is placed in back from where players blindly draw them, and whichever color is drawn, you can use it to this die to activate the unit. The unit must pass an activation order based on whether it's button up, whether its base morale is, whether it's officer nearby, and so on. It's an interesting way of spacing up the activation, bringing a sense of uncertainty to the game, and trying to simulate the chaos of a firefight. But, of course, this randomness can mess up your plans and you need to think a bit ahead and take into account that everything can go wrong even in a moment if you're very unlucky. Or, as the Field Marshal von Mott said, no plan survives the contact with the enemy. The rules are clearly written in their second edition, with plenty of explanatory diagrams and examples of their use in practice. So there is no confusion about how the authors intended particular mechanics, and everything is clear and distinct. Therefore, after reading the rules for the first time, it should be no problem to play the game straight through without any major problems or hitches, and without having to leaf through the book. Thus, this game is easily suitable for beginners who might have difficulty with other more complex games, either in terms of mechanics or the style of rules interpretation. A game at the recommended 1000 or 1250 points is with each side having around 10 units. The basic composition would be something as platoon, 3 infantry squads, machine gun, mortar, bazooka, cannon and tank, to give you an idea. And this game takes around 2 hours, which is about the classic length of a single game by the wargaming standards. As hinted at the introduction, historical accuracy might be an issue for some players with Bolt Action. However, this is a very subjective impression that everyone has set up differently. For me, personally, the game is a great compromise between relatively snappy gameplay and really rather cinematic reality with no historical atrocities happening on the surface. The game mechanics contain all situations as one expects. Infantry in the open will die to machine guns fire or artillery fire. Submachine guns are better than rifles for fighting in buildings, and the German machine gun shoots more than its allied counterparts. Units can better handle their tasks with an officer nearby, veterans just don't shy away from anything, etc, etc. But still, there are few mechanics that aren't entirely kosher. For the sake of simplifying the rules, vehicles and heavy weapons are categorized as light tank or heavy gun, and it can be a problem for World War II buffs that the game doesn't distinguish between Sherman, Panzer IV or T-34 tanks, which are virtually identical for gameplay perspective. Was the M4 Sherman with the 76mm gun different than the Panzer IV with 7.5cm cubic 40 gun? Undoubtedly yes. Do these little details matter when we are playing game about 70 soldiers and 2 tanks trying to capture some nameless hill or charge in the small village? Well, in my opinion, no. Similarly, the rules and range of the weapons are more matter of game design than reality, with an assault rifle having smaller range than conventional bolt-action rifle, and such a pistol with its 6-inch range shooting from one end have problem to shooting from one end of the room to the another. And another stumbling block is building your own army. Bolt action has ton of unit pages, as well as plethora of squad types for different eras and battles of the war, allowing you to build really anything you can think of, including very historically faithful armies. As well, bunch of historical abominations that never happened during the war, but the rules will allow to play them out anyway. Here is up the direction of the players and their approach to the game, whether they build nice, historically accurate army or prefer some ruleless heavy combos. But for me, it's definitely better for the rule makers to give players free rein to build their armies, rather to tie them down unnecessarily. The rulebook itself is beautiful hardback with tons of nice photos of the models, and thanks to the collaboration with the Osprey, there are also artwork from their World War II encyclopedias. Even the structure is clear, full of examples to rules, and you can see the work of the professionals. There is nothing to fault on bolt action on this aspect. In addition to the basic rules, the book includes time-down rules for major armies and 12 scenarios. And thus, somewhat unnecessary, short introduction to World War II if you have coincidentally never heard of this war period, but at the same time you get the hands on this game. In theory, you don't need additional campaigns or special rulebooks for individual nations. It's no problem to make it just with this basic book. Even 10 years after its release, Bolt Action has incredible support from Warlord games. The game has its own model line, which is constantly being expanded with new infantry and vehicles. Most of the main armies are also vast majority of the units as plastic sprues. Even for vehicle, Warlord games have teamed up with a well-known modeling company Italeri, so you don't have to worry about the quality. Bolt Action has received equally intense support in the form of supplementary books. In addition to the classic army books, with the rules for each army, through the basic rules including the Trimed rules for the Germany, Great Britain, Japan, USA and the Soviet Union, Warlords have also published several dozen of campaign books containing special rules and scenarios for selected battlefields. Thus, the Battle of Berlin, Fortress Budapest, the Normandy Landing, then itself has 3 different books, Battle of Stalingrad, Palau, Market Garden, you name it. They plan but do not execute the German invasion of Britain has also 2 alternative historic books on its own. The Korean War also gets its own book and model line, including match characters, so the game is properly taken care even decade after publication. Similarly, FAQs and errata are still coming out regularly. All above makes Bolt Action still a great game 10 years after its release and still has something to offer in 2024. While its core rules are relatively conservative wargaming as it was played in the 90s, the innovative activation mechanics feel fresh and modern in an era where most games still works with the old I go, you go system. Some might have problem with the oversimplifications of some of the game stats for weapons and units, but it's not problem to possibly adjust them using house rules to be more historically accurate. This simplification allows both newcomers to wargaming who are not unnecessarily overwhelmed by the multitude of nearly identical rules, and newcomers to the Second World War who don't necessarily know all the difference in weaponry to get into the game, so the game makes it easier for them to navigate for what's on the table. Additionally, the great advantage of historical wargaming still applies here. The models can be applied to a variety of different roles because Sherman tank will be Sherman tank in any game. So bolt action can be used as a great introductionary game from which you eventually move to the waters of more complex games. So on the other hand, a lot of people certainly won't buy Second World War style version of Saving Private Ryan or Call of Duty, and will happily play the game even knowing that the real war probably looks a little different. Wargaming is still about gaming and is supposed to be primarily entertainment and not educational documentary. However, the aforementioned criticism don't change the fact that the bolt action is simply a good game. This is evident by the fact that 10 years after its release, it's widely played both in the world and even in our country. It hasn't appeared and disappeared again, even though there are dozens of rules playing for the skirmish World War II. So in verdict, bolt action is a great game for newcomers to the hobby, either wargaming in general or historical wargaming with experience from other games. The basic rules are simple to understand, but with some innovative elements to make for interesting tactical battles. The only thing that can be argued is whether it's simulation of World War II or more like a Hollywood movie based on it. So I hope you find this review enjoyable and helpful. And if you do, don't forget to like, subscribe to see more. And if you really like it, don't forget you can become a YouTube channel member and even send me some bucks on my coffee. So thank you, and hopefully see you on the next one.